So let's continue on with identification and authentication. Now, a key concept for implementing any type of access control. So remember, these controls we're putting in place to keep people out or let people in is controlling the proper authentication of subjects within the IT system. So we have to allow or not allow people in, and the right people. Let the right people in and keep the right or keep the wrong people out of our systems. So the first thing that happens, a subject, right? You, a person, the principal, first identifies themselves. Remember, I can say, I am Dave, all right? That's weak. There's no proof of that. You're just taking my word for it that that's my name. So that identification shouldn't be trusted. So the subject then does what? That's right, they authenticate themselves by providing an assurance that that claimed identity is valid. I am who I say I am. I'm authenticating myself to you. I am proving to you I am who I say I am. Now those two things together, my identity and my authentication, is a credential set. So that's the term used for the combination of putting those two things together. And I think I mentioned that in the previous section when I was talking about my credentials. When I mention credentials, I'm talking about my identity and my authentication. My username and password is the example that I was using. And I said I didn't want to give it away because there's other things that we can use, right? So let's talk about those other things we can use other than a password. 3 basic authentication methods. Type 1, Type 2, Type 3. Something you know, something you have, and something you are. You could say something you are and something you do. I'll go ahead and add that in there. So something you know, right? Something up here in the noggin that you know that nobody else is supposed to know. Type 1 authentication. So we're going to present the subject with some type of challenge. All right? You say your mark, prove it. You know, what is the password, right? What's the super secret password? What's the PIN? You're going to challenge them and they have to respond. And hopefully they're going to respond with the correct answer. Now, once they give that correct answer, they're authorized. And then we move on to the next step, which we talked about earlier. They're authenticated. I get my A's mixed up there. Once they get authenticated, then we move on to the next step and they get authorized. They can do what they want to do. So identify, authentication, and then they're authorized. Now, things we need to look out for when it comes to this type 1 authentication. Stealing your passwords, right? Different ways they could do it, like password hashes and password cracking. If they steal a password hash, they may be able to use something like a rainbow table, right? And that rainbow table is a table that you can create. It's one that attackers can create. It's one that you can get off the internet, right? We mentioned those places on the internet that we can go that we really shouldn't go, but we can. You can get them through IRC channels. We'll talk about some instant messaging. But we can get that information. People sell them on the web, and it's not really against the law. They're just creating a rainbow table for us. That rainbow table has all kinds of hashes listed out and the corresponding words or phrases or text that go with those hashes. So what happens is somebody could try to get the hash of your password off of a system. Now, there's no way to work the hash backwards. You can't reverse engineer it to say, oh, well, that hash really means abracadabra. It doesn't work like that. So for password hashes, I would have to steal them, and I would get all of them off of the system. Maybe there's 3 users that are on there. You, the administrator, maybe a guest user. All right, so there's not very many hashes. So I take those hashes, and I put them into a computer program, an application. That application can use those rainbow tables, those lists with all the hashes. And what it simply does is takes the hash that was compromised or stolen, and it compares them to the list all the way down. And once I find a match, an exact match, I just say, oh, well, here's the hash that matches this hash. The password is abracadabra. Because what I've done is created a word list and then hashed those word lists. So if I match it up and it's an exact match bit for bit, then your password has to be abracadabra. I didn't necessarily work it backwards. It's just the law of deduction until I get to the one that I need. And that could take a while, right? Because there are literally thousands upon thousands, if not millions of different combinations that we can have with different letters and numbers and characters and things like that. So it may take a while. It may be fairly quick. We could use dictionary attacks. Again, we're going through a word list. That's why when we say, as security professionals, we're always putting it in policies, don't use single words, don't use just words out of the dictionary. You don't want to use password. You don't want to use camera, television, house, dog, cat. Those are way too short anyway. But you don't want to use just some common words you may find in the dictionary. It would take a computer seconds to go through a dictionary list and crack your password. Don't ever use dictionary words. We could have a brute force attack. That is programs that are designed to look for every possible combination of a password. You may have heard of password complexity requirements. Like you have to use 3 out of the 4. An uppercase, a lowercase, special character, and or number. Well, a brute force attack will look for those special characters and numbers. A dictionary attack doesn't do that, right? It doesn't have numbers in the dictionary. There's no special characters. There's no ampersand or asterisk in the dictionary for words. But a brute force attack can do that. And you can get in and tell it, you can say, okay, I know it's going to be between 8 and 14 characters. And it's going to have uppercase, lowercase, and a special character. Maybe you oversaw, looking over their shoulder and you saw them typing something like that. But you're not real sure. So you put that in brute force and you let it go. And it's going to take a long time. All right? The longer the password is, the more time it's going to take. The more special characters and the more complex you make it, the longer it takes. All right? Length helps more than anything. I think last time I put my password for my laptop, my desktop, and there's a password checker online, they told me that it was going to take 14 trillion years for somebody to brute force attack my password and crack it. So I felt pretty good about that. I don't think I'm going to be around in 14 trillion years, so I'm okay with that. But that would be a brute force attack. And then back up one here, we got a hybrid attack. And that takes the best of the dictionary attacks and the best of the brute force attacks. And the way that works is that dictionary attacks are faster than brute force attacks, and the password hashes using those rainbow tables are faster than brute force attacks because the brute force attack says, okay, there's my criteria. I'm going to try A. Boom. No. A. No. A. No. A. No. And you get the idea, right? So it's going to go from A's to B's to C's to D's, and then it uses the capital letters, then the numbers, then special, and it's going to try every combination. Takes a long time. Dictionary attacks and the rainbow tables, they go down through lists, and they just compare, and it's extremely fast, especially compared to a brute force attack. So what we do is we take our brute force attack and our dictionary attack, and we make the best of both worlds. The best of the dictionary attack is the speed and simplicity of it. The brute force attack is all the different options that we can have. So we come up with all the different options, we make that list, and then we have our hybrid attack. So things we have to look out for when it comes to something like a password. Your passphrase is even better. A PIN number, right? Things that you know that nobody else is supposed to know. Then we have type 2, something that you have. This is type 2 authentication, requires users to possess something that I can hold on to, right? I don't know it, but it's something I hold on to. That's going to prove our identity. That's going to give us authentication. Because if I have a username and that username goes with a particular token, then I'm good. Because I'm the only one supposed to have that token. And that's my username. They go together. You may think of smart cards and PIN numbers. Think about when you go to the ATM machine or the automated teller machine. I don't know why we say ATM machine, but when we go to the ATM, you put your ATM card in there, and what does it prompt you for? Your PIN, something that you know. That is something that you have. You put it in, great. Now that goes with something that you know, multi-factor authentication. Good stuff. And then something that you are. The one that is not as popular as the other two as far as use out there, but it's getting more and more prevalent. Type 3, something you are, is biometrics, physical characteristics. And we use these physical characteristics for authentication. We can also use them for identification in most cases because that's my eyeball. That's my fingerprint. So it's identifying me and it's authenticating me because it's all in one swipe, right? No pun intended, but one swipe. Now, biometrics are used for establishing identity or authentication. Now, sometimes you have to put in a username and you use biometrics. Sometimes you do not. Like my phone, right? Has a fingerprint scanner now. You tell somebody that 10 years ago, you'd be like, oh yeah, I can unlock my phone with my finger scan. And they're gonna be like, no, that's not possible. I just now got it on my laptop. Well, it's coming along, like I said, right? They've got some laptops now, right, with the webcams up in the top, and it can do the facial recognition, right? Biometrics. So they are becoming more and more popular, but I don't think they've caught on to the whole something you know and something you have just yet. They're moving that way, but they've got to get better. We're going to talk about why they've not caught on as well yet. Because the accuracy of biometric systems need to be considered before you just jump into a biometric control program. Yeah, it sounds cool. You'd be like, yeah, to get in my building, you have to talk to the biometric device there, and if it doesn't recognize your voice, you can't get in. Well, that sounds awesome. But there could be some errors in there, the accuracy of that. What if you have a sore throat that day? All right. What if you're hoarse? You've been talking a lot. What if you got laryngitis and you can't talk at all? Well, I guess you can't go to work. It might be a good thing. I don't know. So there's metrics used to judge this accuracy that I'm talking about. A false rejection rate, a false acceptance rate, and the crossover error rate. So let's take a look at these a little closer. The false rejection rate. This occurs when an authorized subject, like you, is rejected by the biometric system as unauthorized. So back to my example just a second ago. You have voice recognition to get into the building or into a room. What if you have a sore throat? What if you're nasally, right? If you got a cold and you're talking real deep or something like that. Might not recognize your voice as being you, all right? And if it doesn't, you know you're authorized. That's my building. I work in there. I've been working there for 5 years. But all of a sudden it says, no, you're not authorized. That is a false rejection rate. This is a type 1 error, all right? This one's probably better than the other one, which we're getting ready to talk about, because this is going to keep people out. It can become frustrating. I know sometimes, like if my hand's sweating or it's cold or if it got wet, I was doing the dishes or got out of the shower or something, and I try to unlock my phone, it sometimes does not recognize my fingerprint, right? So I'm sitting there trying to, unlock it, and it keeps saying, wrong. Cover the whole thing, put your finger right. And after 3 or 4 tries, it locks me out. So I have to just wait. And then I can try again. Yeah, there is an alternative. But my point is, it can become frustrating. Think how frustrating it would be if you went out for your smoke break and you tried to get back into the building and now you can't because it doesn't recognize your voice. So now your car keys are up in the office. Your jacket might be up there. Your stuff is up there. Your backpack, your purse, whatever. You can't get to your stuff. So now you got to wait, till somebody else can get in. Then you're tailgating. Now you're breaking policy of the company. But you're so frustrated because you can't get back in the building. And then maybe the other people are following policy and not letting you back in the building. So then somebody's got to go get the security guy. And then you're going to have to figure out how to authenticate yourself again, right? Because they use that for authentication. They're like, it is me. Well, show me some identification. I can't. It's in my purse upstairs. Right? Be very frustrating. So we have to take that into consideration as well. We could have reduction in work due to poor access conditions, expenditure of resources to revalidate those authorized users, because you may have to reauthorize them again. Program the system for your fingerprint, for your eyes, for your voice, things like that. Then we have the false accept rate or false acceptance rate. This is worse than the rejection rate, in my opinion. And a false acceptance occurs when an unauthorized subject is now accepted as valid. Now, sometimes this can happen because of the rejection rate. People are just getting frustrated. They're frustrated, they're complaining. Your system's not working. I'm trying to get into the door. It won't let me. Or I can't get into my computer because every time I scan, it's so cold in the building because you turn the air down so much, it doesn't recognize my fingerprint scan anymore. People are complaining. So what do you do as a security admin, or what are you forced to do? You may not want to do it, but what may you be forced to do by HR or lead or CEO or CIO? You might have to turn the sensitivity down, right? Lower the accuracy a little bit of whatever biometrics that you're using. And as soon as you do that, you can start introducing vulnerabilities, because now we can get this false acceptance rate. So when the data points are lowered down, all right, so they say, okay, we're going to do a fingerprint scan. I want 5 points scanned on your finger. Well, it's giving us lots of errors, so let's turn it down to 3. Well, somebody might be able to match 3 of them up on your finger, right? That's a false acceptance rate. Now they're unauthorized people in our building. So the organization is risking unauthorized users gaining access. This is a type 2 error, a false acceptance rate. Like I said, I think this one's worse because now we have unauthorized access in systems, physical buildings that people don't belong. And that's a bad thing for me as a security professional. And then we have something called the crossover error rate. All right, so we have our false rejection rate, we have our false acceptance rate. Where these two rates meet, right, in the middle, is the crossover error rate. And that's where we want it. All right, we want a low, stable CER. We don't want a bunch of rejection rates. That's not good. We don't want a bunch of acceptance rates. That's really not good. We want to try to meet in the middle, the crossover error rate. The equal error rate is how you may see it also. So this is the overall accuracy of our biometric system. So as the sensitivity of a biometric system increases, the rejection rates will rise and the acceptance rates will fall, because we're turning it up, right? We're saying be more and more precise, which is, you might think, well, that's a good thing, right? But you may have more rejections because if they don't get it just right, however you're doing it, if they don't speak exactly the same, if they don't run their finger or exactly the same, if they don't hold their eyeball still exactly the same, you're going to have rejections. And then we lead to frustrations like we talked about. Now, conversely, on the opposite side there, as the sensitivity is lowered, we're not going to have as many rejections, but we're going to have way too many exceptions. All right? We'll have too many people getting accepted that may not get to. So we don't want this, and we don't want this. Kind of want to meet in the middle where that equal error rate is. Not too many rejections, not too many false exceptions. So those types of biometric controls that I keep referring to, iris scans and retina scans, all right? They're scanning your eyeballs. Now, iris scan is a little more precise. You have to get a little more closer to the actual scanner. And sometimes, people don't like that stuff. Everybody's got their phobias about something, right? Spiders, heights, water, something in your eyeball. Some people don't like that, right? You get up real close to somebody's eyeball doing with something and they may become uncomfortable. And you don't want to make your employees feel uncomfortable. With an iris scan, you have to get rather close. Retina scans, you got to get pretty close too, but not quite as close. But anyway, you're going to have something up there close to their eyeball. Some people don't like that. Some people are comfortable with that. If that's just the way it is, then that person will have to get comfortable with that role and that position. A fingerprint scanning or fingerprinting is pretty common nowadays. I mentioned that my cell phone, right, has a fingerprint reader on it. So I can, pick up my phone, turn it on, and if it's locked after so long, it locks it out, right? I take it, scan my finger, and it unlocks my phone because it's identifying me and authorizing me once I authenticate myself. It says, oh, welcome back, right? You can do that on your laptops, right? Laptops have fingerprint scanners sometimes like over in the corners, right? I used to have one at work, right? I can scan it, I'm good to go. It identified me, it authorized or authenticated me, and then it authorizes me to come on in because it knows who I am. I just proved it with my fingers. You can do it with your voice. This one probably has more of a rejection rate because of the complexity, but if you speak clearly and you project enough and the device is of good quality, you could use this for biometric controls, right? You go in and you say, please let me in, right? You may have to say a particular phrase. You may have to just speak. Normally it's some type of particular phrase. So like it's going to be something that has certain syllables in it. So they say a particular phrase, not that that's the passphrase. That's not the passphrase or the passcode. It's what you're saying. Certain syllables together, certain letter blends together, things like that. That's what it's listening for, not the secret password or anything like that. You have facial scans. I mentioned the laptop earlier, right? With the webcam, it can, once you get at a certain area, right, it can scan your face and see, look at the measurements, look at the metrics of your face to see, oh, well, that's you, come on in. You're identified and authorized at the same time, or authenticated, then authorized, excuse me. Keep saying that backwards, and I don't know why. But it will do a facial scan and see how well that is. I think this one's going to get more popular. I think it's going to get more and more popular with laptops with the built-in webcams, as long as you don't turn that webcam off. I know a lot of security professionals, we don't like that on because of spyware and malicious malware and stuff, where people turning on the camera when you don't know it. So, we put tape over it. We do all kind of crazy stuff. But I think that one's going to become more popular. Microsoft just put out some new software for facial recognition, and they're playing with it online, and people can go online and play around with it right now. I think it's going to become more popular. So that's something that you are, right? And one more something that you are is the hand geometry, right? They've got devices where you take your hand and you slide it in. It's got like little prongs that are sticking up, and you slide your hand in there and you squeeze your fingers against them, right? And it gets your hand geometry. And this is actually very precise. The military uses this one. So you can come in and you squeeze against these prongs and you hold really still, which I had a problem doing. I didn't hold very still. But you hold real still, right? And it takes your hand geometry. And then you do your other hand. And it's looking for the patterns in your hands. It's looking how your hands are, right? The geometry of your hands to prove, again, your identity and your authentication. Now that's something that you are. And earlier I said something that you are, something that you do. The something is you do, the one I have listed here would be keyboard dynamics. They can actually go in now. There's applications out there that can figure out who you are by how you type, how fast you type, if you hold down, how long you hold keys down, which fingers you use to type. Do you type the right way? I don't know what the right way would be, but to me, this is the right way. But do you go from one key to another faster than you do, say, another key? Because like some keys, like I could probably go from F and R really quick, but reaching over to Y or reaching up to a number, it might take me a little bit longer. But some of them you're faster on, right? Your pinkies, you're usually a little slower than you are the other 3 fingers, things like that. It's looking for the dynamics of how you use that keyboard. Another one that I don't have listed out here on this slide is your gait, right? How you walk. That's something that you do, right? It can look at, for lack of a technical term, your strut, I guess, right? How far apart you walk. If you walk heavier on one side of your foot than another, does one leg hit a little harder than the other? Because they always say one leg's a little bit longer than the other. I don't know, I've never tried to measure, but I'm going to take their word for it. So you might hit harder with one than the other. You may limp a little bit. I don't know. May strut. Whatever, however you walk. But that's something that you do. So the way that you move, if you will. And then again, the keyboard dynamics. So those are just some types of biometric controls that we need to be familiar with. And again, some of them are a little more popular than others, especially with end users, and then some of them are a little more popular than others with, say, system and security professionals, because, well, we want the best one, right? We want the one that gives us the most secure environment. But sometimes, we have the most secure environment that doesn't work out so well with the most usable and friendly end user environment as well. So we have to kind of meet in the middle, right? Usually we kind of meet more on their ends, but it's possible. But biometric controls, great things. I was trying to think of a good example for you, but the first Mission Impossible, right? When they were trying to get into Langley there in the CIA building, right? The gentleman that ran that data terminal, where that list was that they were trying to have, he had like an eye scan, a voice recognition, and he had to have his hand scanned. And then there was another control, the lady that sat there with the gun under the desk, right? But that was a different type of control. That's not biometric controls. But he had to do 3 of them, right? His eyes, his voice, and his handprint. And I think he had to have a card to even get in. So all kind of controls just to get in that one secure room.